actually start off with teaching equations, meaningful equations and problem solving, we start right at the bottom with the numerals and their value. And then we build up bit by bit. If you look at the Morse code, you know, they don't learn words, they learn the dots and dashes to the letters, and it's very precise. And with music, we don't start with a score, we start with just one or two notes and where they are on the lines. So this is the important thing to understand, is that English has a code. In fact, all languages that are written down have codes. And it's understanding the code that becomes important. The difference between these codes on the screen and the code of English is that the ones on the screen are very reliable. They are precise, exact. Whereas unfortunately, the code for English is a bit flaky, to say the least, and needs more careful teaching. So let's look at why. You know, why is it so difficult? Well, English is the most complicated code that uses the Roman alphabet. Whereas if you take languages like Spanish or Italian, German, they are much simpler codes and much easier to teach and learn. But English is a very complicated code, complicated because instead of just having one way of representing the sounds, there are several, and that's what causes the difficulty. And of course, that's important that we teach it step by step very carefully, because it is more tricky than a straightforward code. And so why is it tricky? Well, the first snag is that the 44 sounds have there are only 26 letters to represent those 44 sounds that we speak in English. We had lots of influences from other countries, the Celts, the Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and French. They came to our countries, invaded, and left their legacy. And if you look at this code, if you look at the CH, in the Anglo-Saxon, that's a ch sound. But in the Greek language, the CH is represented for the k sound. And like in Christmas, chemist, and so on. And in French, the CH is represented by a sh sound. And so you've got these different ways of looking at the letters, and you have to say different sounds. So French is champagne, machine. So you can see these influences have come from other countries. And then on top of that, we did print our dictionary quite early, and once it's gone down in print, we're not very good at changing it, so it stays like that. So, and also over the years, our pronunciation of the words changes, but the spelling hasn't. So you've got another little snag. So I think it's important, before we go to the 5 skills, to understand a bit about the code. Now, the single letter sounds are on the whole fairly straightforward, but when we come to the digraphs, that's 2 letters representing a sound, or even more letters, then it becomes more complicated. So have a look here. We've got the A sound in English can be represented by AI, and this is the first one we do in Jolly Phonics, and that's in the word like rain. Then after a little bit, we teach them as another way of writing or reading the A sound, and that is the A hop over E, or the split digraph, as in the word date. And then after that, there's another way, AY, as in say. Now that's 3 ways. So the top here, we've got the single letter, and then frowned upon. It wasn't really taken very seriously. And if you do a bit, that's all right, but not too much. And it was our head of department that looked at the children further up and saw that some children are still struggling. And she looked at why they were struggling. And she realized that they just didn't know how to work the words out. The good readers, they could easily read the words. But the weak readers, they just looked at it and guessed and just said didn't know or whatever. So she thought, well, why don't they know? Why can't they do it? They just did not know enough of the alphabetic sounds. And so she decided that she would change the method. And this was very important because she said, let's just forget about reading books for the first term. Let us just concentrate on teaching the children the letter sounds and how to work the words out for reading and writing. And that was a huge change. And of course, a lot of parents were upset about this because their children weren't going to get a book for a year, for a term. And then we did it. And there were 3 of us classes, all the same, and 3 teachers doing this. And we found that we had huge improvement, which was very, very important to us. And then, of course, later on, the children are tested when they are 7 years old, and it showed up. They were hugely their improvement was enormous. Then we had another influence, and this is highly important. Why I'm going on about this is because the second influence was from a researcher, and he asked us to do his program. And his philosophy was that before you start to teach reading and writing, you should teach children an identity. Awful program, I have to say, because it was impossible for teachers, but we did our best. And what it did teach us was that it was very important because some children could hear those sounds so easily and other children struggled. And of course, in my thinking afterwards, I thought, well, for goodness sake, if you can't hear the sounds, this whole code is based on the sounds. And if you can't hear them, and nobody teaches you how to hear them, you are never going to be able to crack the code. And so that was another important thing. And the best thing was that it took the bottom children away from the bottom and put them into the average or above average on the whole. Now, these charts are important because it shows the difference between when you teach with synthetic phonics through the code, the results that you can get. And this was at our school. And you can see here, there's the bell-shaped curve. Now, if you understand about standardized tests, the children should all fit in that curve. And there should just be a few at the bottom who are struggling and a few at the top who are really good, excellent. Now, look what's happened to ours. They've shunted all to the right. They've all got much better. They all improved by a year on average, at least. And you can see here that the vast majority are doing so well. We do have a few problems down here and we need to address it. This was our serious failure down here. These ones just need watching very carefully and giving extra support, but the rest are going to be fine. But you see, look what happens when you don't do the phonics, you don't do the code, you don't crack it. At this time, this is back in 1995, admittedly, but at this time it was very anti-phonics, anti-reading schemes, anti-anything. You just have to have exciting books and the children will read because then they want to. And it was a totally wrong philosophy. And just look at the damage it did to all these children. There's your bell-shaped curve. They have got such a heap of children, most of the children, 17.9% at the bottom here. And I can tell you these children haven't got a clue to read. Can hardly read any words at all. Absolutely hopeless, not a chance. And the ones here are going to struggle to survive. This is a bit wobbly in the getting towards the middle. And then from there on, those will be fine. So it really is important to understand that we have to teach the right way if we're going to be successful with all children. So what do we need for the skills for reading and writing? Well, the first thing is a bit of understanding of the language. And language is developed through speaking and listening, and mums teach their children, speak to them, and the children pick it up. They pick up their mother tongue. And if it's not their mother tongue, but they're spoken to while they're young children, they will pick it up. The brain is just geared to picking up language. And we learn language all our life. We keep on learning new words and so on. So that is important. And if your children are very poor at that, we do have Jolly English, which helps with vocabulary and developing the spoken language. With Jolly Phonics, we're concentrating on the decoding and encoding for reading and writing. We want children to be able to get the words off the page or to put them down on paper. And part of the teaching is letter formation. We've got to get that correct from the beginning, and pencil control. This is a very classic around the world chart and is used a lot now. And it demonstrates perfectly. You've got to have the two skills, the language understanding, and you also need to be able to read the words and get the words off the page, and that's your decoding. And if you're good at both of them, the language and reading the words on the page, you'll be a good reader. And if you're poor at both of them, you'll be a poor reader. But if you're good at language, but poor at being able to read the words, you will be frustrated because you can't read the words and you're not a good reader. But you feel that you should be because you understand everything. And then if you're good at reading the words, and it can happen that some are jolly good at reading the words but haven't got a lot of language, then they're still poor readers because they might be able to read it, but if you're not understanding it, you're not really reading it properly, are you? So it's very important. And the equation is decoding times oral comprehension equals reading comprehension. So you've got to be good at both to get reading comprehension going. Now, these are the teaching methods. Now, systematic synthetic phonics is the most effective. Now, this is the method that we use in Jolly Phonics. This is the method that we developed in the classroom. It wasn't called synthetic phonics then, but it has become called that since. It's a research term, and synthetic means to blend, to put together. It doesn't mean artificial here. So it's all about working the words out. Then the other method of teaching, there's only two really, whole word learning or whole language or balanced literacy, rote learning, they're all the same kind of thing. They are the least effective. They require a huge amount of memory, and although some children will do okay on it, the majority don't. And then, of course, if you mix the two methods, those two ways, if you mix them up, then you reduce the effectiveness of synthetic phonics. So, for example, if you teach synthetic phonics and teach them how to decode, and then you go and give them reading books that use all these letter sounds that you haven't taught yet, then immediately it doesn't work very well, the blending. And so some children, especially those who haven't got such a good memory, start to think, this doesn't work, I'll start to guess. And once guessing starts, if you have child guessing, you know you have a reading problem that is developing, and it's something you need to watch out for. This is an unusual experiment, and I liked it very much when I read about it. It was carried out on university students. So you're taking your bright children for a start, and they wanted to see how good adults were at memorizing symbols. And so they made all these symbols linked to the words, and they gave the students were divided into two groups, and they were told they've got to learn the words and see how many they could learn in a day. And they were given 30 of them to memorize. Unknown to one of the groups, the other group had been told, actually, there is a code to this. So I don't know if you can see it, but there's a code here. And then they were asked to learn to read the 30 words. And at the end of the day, they were tested. Now, this is interesting because the ones who did memory were the better ones. They scored higher because the other ones were trying to work out the code and get it working. But the next day, it started to change. And the students that memorized started to find that actually they were forgetting the earlier ones and struggling a bit. And the ones who were on the code, they'd worked it out, were getting better and better at it. So the second day, the code breakers were there. And then after that, it just grew like topsy. So they were much better, the decoders, and the ones that were memorizing were struggling. So there you are, it shows, and that reflects what happens when you do whole word memorizing teaching. In the beginning, if you give them books, in the beginning, you'll start to see that they would progress a bit faster than the ones that were learning all the letter sounds. But after a while, it goes the other way round. And the whole word memorizing children often start to stumble and often start to fail. So Jolly Phonics came about because I was very passionate. I could see our children were much better. They recorded much higher scores, and nobody was interested because at that time phonics was out of fashion. You know, oh yes, you must be a very good teacher, Sue, but no, we don't do it like that now. And so just dismissed completely, even though the results were there. And I kept on sort of telling everybody. And one day at a meeting I was at, linked to simplified spelling, I met a man called Christopher Jolly. And he listened to what I was saying and was very interested and gave me his card and said, let's talk later. And we lived miles apart from each other. And I did. And of course, that was the beginning of Jolly Phonics, because he looked at it, he tested it himself, he realized that it was much better, and he took the risk as an independent, small publisher. He took the risk to say to us, say to me, will you write it? And I said, oh, no, I don't know how to write. You know, I'm not good enough for that. I know what you need to do. And he said, oh yes, just you, I want you to do it. Write it like, just write it and see how you go. And then I wrote 12 pages and I sent it to him and said, is this all right? You know, and he said, oh, no, you're justifying yourself. Don't bother with that. Just say, this is what you need to do. And that became the Phonics Handbook. And on the way, my colleague, Sarah Wernham, joined me. She was new to the school, and she's been with us ever since. So we've worked all together since then. But that's how it came about. And it is a synthetic phonics program because it teaches the alphabetic code from the beginning in a step-by-step simple approach. And what we always avoid doing is asking the children to read words before they can decode them. It's just such an important thing. Some of you might have seen this before, but I have provided this body of knowledge and the tricky words because I think it's good to have a goal. You know where you're going. And basically, with your 5 skills, you need to learn the letter sounds, these letter sounds. There's about 70 odd. And you need to be able to blend those letter sounds. You need to be able to write the letters. You need to be able to form them correctly. You need to be able to read the words easily by blending, and also listen for the sounds and write words and learn those tricky words. So that's what you're aiming for in your year of teaching. Let's look more carefully. There's the first lot of letter sounds. We do 42 of them. And there's only 26 letters. So you see, we have to have some digraphs in there. But that's the main sound. They're the main sounds of representing English. Those letters are used to represent English. The first way we teach. And of course, the digraphs are in there. But you see, as you're introducing each letter sound, more words become available that you can actually blend and work out for yourself. And that's what we are aiming for, to make every child super blenders, really fast at it. And by the time you get to the end there, you will see that there's about 2,000 words that could be read by blending. And of course, when you blend, you only have to blend it a few times and then it becomes known. And then you only use blending on words you don't know. I like you to see here, because this is a word bank. And as each letter sound is taught, then more words become available for blending. And it's so important to have at your fingertips words for blending. And it also gives you a good understanding of how the structure works. So we teach each letter sound, and then more words can be worked out until we get ready for reading books. So we build up gradually to books. And once we've taught one way of representing the sounds, we then have to teach the alternative ways. And the colouring here is linked to the reading books. So the first colour of the 42 letter sounds was red. So that's ready for the red and orange readers. Here, the yellow readers. Then we have the green readers, then the blue readers, and then the purple readers. So our books are linked precisely to what we have taught. And with this knowledge of letter sounds, that is enough for reading. You know, you can get away with, if you just learnt those, you could get away with it. You need to know more with spelling, but that's for reading is fine. So just before we start, how do we read? It is well worth reminding ourselves every time. We come to new words every now and again, usually linked to place names, and we often can work it out, and sometimes it's awkward, we have to ask. So have a go now and see if you can read these yourself. Have a little go. So did you get Phleboton? And here we have Cloptering. And here we've got Schaerbeekby. Those were pretty reliable and we could be successful with those. They're not always, but those ones are. You've never seen them before. So how did you do it? Well, you looked at the beginning of the word on the left and you rolled along those letters and you converted them into sounds and you came up with your pronunciation. And that's how the code works for reading. So let's see how the code works for writing. Now for writing, we need to be able to hear those sounds in words. If you've got a word you want to write, and if somebody tells you that they live at, say, Tangdale, and they ask, you want to write it down, you have a go. So I want you to have a go. If you've got your pencils handy, see if you can write these three words. So the first one is Tangdale. So imagine I come from Tangdale. And then that's near. Ready for the next one? Stranaton. Stranaton. And then Credingby. Credingby. So hope you've had a little chance, but I hope you've thought about it. And how have you done it? Well, you've listened to what I've said, you've listened for those sounds, and you've chosen letters to go for those sounds. And that's how the writing code works. You have to, of course, choose the right letters. And when you've got about 10 different ways of writing A, that's a cause of problem. That's why spelling is much harder than reading. So how did you get it like this? Well, I suspect you got Tangdale. The tang is very regular, very straightforward. Dale, well, Dale, you've got an A in there, and the A could be written with any of those A's I showed you, but you probably know the word Dale, and so you know how to spell it, Tangdale. Then Stranaton, well, the str is straightforward, the a is straightforward, the n, well, hopefully you've got the double N, but you can't, in spelling and place names, you can't be, that's not reliable, but I would put double if I was writing it. Then the well, there's ER, IR, and UR for ers. So, you have to hope that you get the right one. And then tun, stranaton. Well, tun at the end of words tends to be ton. We swallow a bit of it with our pronunciation. And if you know other place names like that, then you'll get it. If you don't, well, then you won't get it. And then you have to say, how do you spell it? Or, how does it go? And then the last one, credding B, well, the cr, you'll be fine with a CR. But then the EA, you could just have an E. That's the usual but sometimes EA says so here it is. So here you can see the word in there, read or read. So there you are, two different ways of representing the EA. So credding B, and B at the end, it could be B-double-E, could be B-E-Y. So this is a snag. There are more ways, and that makes spelling harder. So here we go. So that was the foundation, so you understand exactly where you're going with the teaching, and now it's the how and how to do those skills and develop them. In Jolly Phonics, we have 3 alternative ways, materials. We started off in the beginning with the Phonics handbook, and basically you can do everything with the handbook. It's all there, the notes of what to do and so on, and you can do very well on that. Lots of people have managed with that perfectly well. But people then said, well, we'd like our students to write in pupil books. And so we developed the pupil books, and there are 3 of them for the first year and a teacher's book. And if you're not sure about anything, it's all in the teacher's book. So really look carefully, the lesson notes and the plans and everything. So very important. You need to have your teacher's book as well as the pupil books. And then we've got the whiteboard, and that's software which goes through the teaching in exactly the same way. So they're all teaching the same thing, but with different styles. So you choose which one you want. You don't have them all, and you work from there. So there we are, the 5 basic skills. The first one is learning those letter sounds. I've shown them to you. Then letter formation, that's important. If you can get that correct at the beginning, you will make life easy for the children and yourselves. Blending, that's that skill of being able to put the sounds together. K, at, cat. And then identifying the sounds in words. Well, that was the influence of that researcher all those years ago. And what we do is, if you want to write cat, listen, k, at, and we would hold up a finger for each sound. And by doing quite a few of those with the children, you gradually tune them in and they get used to just listening all the time for the sounds. And it's those 4 skills we do right from the beginning. We don't do the tricky words from the beginning. We wait until we're further down, and I'll explain that as we go along. So here you go. There's your 42 letter sounds. You can have a jolly poster or just plain black and white on paper. Here you can see we started off, some people say, why did we choose these letter sounds? Well, we chose them, the first 6, because I was told you could make the most words from that. And we thought, oh yes, that's what we want. We want to straight away get the children working out how to read and write those with those letter sounds. And then we got that caterpillar cut in because we realized it was important for developing the skill for the D and the G and the O. They all start with that, and the Q later on down here. They all start with that caterpillar K first of all, and the A as well. We kept the D and the B, the D and the B. Remember, we're only teaching the letter sounds, not the letter names. Letter names are a grown-up way of talking about the letters, and we don't teach them at the same time as the letter sounds because we don't want them to get muddled. So, I've seen schools where they teach at the same time, and I found that I asked the children to blend a word, and often a letter name came in, and that of course ruins it. So instead of d or g, they might go d or g, you know, and it doesn't, they can't get the word, or d or g. It does, you know, the letter names are not needed for reading or writing at all. It's only a grown-up way of talking about them and then useful for dictionary work later on. We kept them separated because they're notoriously muddled by children. Often if there's going to muddle any letters, it's those two. And then here we put down the first digraph, the AIA. And the reason was that we wanted to, before we finished the single letters, look, there's some more single letters still. We did this deliberately because we wanted to say those digraphs are just as important. I've had teachers say, oh, we don't do the digraphs, it's far too hard. And yet they go and give them reading books that they can't work out because they haven't taught them enough. And so it just doesn't make sense. And that, of course, it's still much easier to learn a few digraphs than it is to memorize lots of words that use them. So the pace of teaching, ideally, we teach one letter sound a day. Now, that's a good pace. There are some children who could learn 3 letter sounds a day, and there's some that need longer than that. But we find that 1 letter sound a day works well. It's a good pace, and then we work very carefully with the children who haven't got such good memories and make sure that they master it as well. But of course, we all have different circumstances. You know, we may not have the children every day. We may not, you know, we may only have mornings or whatever. Certain circumstances, you can reduce the pace and perhaps have 4 letter sounds and the last day as a revision. That's just fine. I wouldn't go too slowly because you'll just frustrate the more able ones because they will just be chafing at the bit. They want to get on. And, you know, you've got to get 42 into them before you start your reading books. So you don't want to delay it too slowly. Don't want to make it go too slowly. But the important thing to remember is that you never ask the children to read words that have letter sounds that you haven't taught, because that's when it starts to go wrong. What about parent support? Well, that's very, very useful. Extremely valuable. Our parents are our greatest asset in many ways. Not all of them can be, but anybody who can, that's great. And we always used to have a meeting with the parents before the children started, and I would explain exactly how their children were going to be taught, how the code is a code and we need to teach the children how to work it out. And I also found it helpful to tell the parents that some children find learning to read and write difficult. And it's nothing to do with intelligence. It is always to do with their memory. So for even learning the letter sounds, it's a struggle for those children. And also, if they don't hear the sounds in words and nobody teaches them, then that can make it very difficult. Now, we do the teaching of the listening for the letter sounds in school, make sure that's right. And the parents, if they can help them learn those letter sounds at home, that's marvelous as well. I think it helps them to understand that it's not linked to intelligence. I've had some strugglers who are highly intelligent, and if you go to all the dyslexia associations and everything, there's some very, very intelligent children that have troubles, but most of their problem is that they weren't taught the code. So be careful when we're teaching to pronounce the sounds as purely as possible. So we say s and not s. So not d or g, but d or g. Now you can't help but put a little on the d and the g. It's impossible, but if you reduce it as much as possible. So keep to the pure sounds. And here's a link that you can go to the Jolly Learning website and the resource bank and hear the sounds. So if you're not sure, it's available there. So first day of teaching. So we're off. We're going, and here we've got these little children all keen to learn, and ready, and you've got their attention, they're sitting there waiting, and you tell them a story. And in the story comes the letter sound. And the first letter sound that they're learning today is the S sound. And you can make a big story out of this or a little story. There is guidance in the teacher's book. But basically, the family go out and the dog starts to bark, and the boy runs over to see what the dog is barking at, and out of the grass comes a snake. So there's your sound and your little story. Now, teachers who are good at telling stories, they can elaborate it as much as possible. And of course, if you haven't got English in the classroom, you can sort of simplify it and act it out as much as possible. Now, with each letter sound, there is an action. Now, I started these years ago, and this is why I think Jolly Phonics has probably got the edge with programs, is because as ordinary teachers developed it in the classroom. And of course, you know, when you've got a lot of children, and I had 44 when I started, you've got to keep them active and busy and attentive if you're going to get any of them to learn anything. And so the actions are so useful because when you practice the letter sounds, they can do the actions, and that keeps them busy while they're doing the revision. So very useful. In the picture, we've got lots of things that have got a S sound in them, like nest and snake and sun and so on. And then the letter formation, we have to teach the children, we have to show them that this is the letter and it has a S sound, and they put their finger there and follow the arrows or the groove if you've got the finger phonic books. And they also have to start blending, but of course you can't blend a real word with only one letter sound, so we do auditory blending. So the teacher says the sounds and the children see if they can hear the word, and they can look at the picture and you can say, listen carefully, can anybody see the S, N? And one or two children will hear that that's sun. And then you might say, then, can you see the D, O, G? And you might see somebody else hear dog and come and point to it or whatever. So that's your auditory training. You're training them to hear the word when you say the sounds. And then later on, when there's enough letters, you can show them words. So that's the blending. Now the segmenting is the other way around. In segmenting, we need to be able to hear the sounds in words. So we need to be able to hear that sun is S, N. Well, that is a bit hard for the first day. So we tend to just sort of say, just listen. Can you hear a S in sun? And some will hear it, but most of them, no. Can you hear a S in snake? And then you get more yeses. And then can you hear a S in dog? And some of the children will say yes, and you realize you haven't got there. But you are tuning their ears in. It's so important to tune them into hearing those sounds. So here we are. We've got a multisensory way of teaching with the actions. And we also, when we get to the blending, that keeps them busy with the formation. We actually show them how to form the letter with their hand. So all very helpful. Let's see a bit more. That's auditory blending. If you want to do it with a few little pictures, that's just fine. That makes it even easier. You know, where is the sock? And there, that's going to be as easy as you can make it. And most children, if they have sock in their vocabulary, will be able to do that. So you have to make your adjustments according to how much English your children have. That pencil hold is very, very important. If you can get the children to hold their pencil correctly from the beginning, it makes it much easier for the children, but also, you know, if they get into a bad habit, it's ever so hard to get rid of, and sometimes impossible. So I used to get them to wiggle their fingers, put the pencil between their thumb and the first finger, and the third finger stopped it falling on the ground. Then they tucked the other two fingers away. And basically, you wanted all the movement to come from the knuckles. Very important to get those knuckles going, the movement. The hand rests on the table and the knuckles move the pencil. And I likened the knuckles to frog's legs, so we call them our froggy legs. Now, don't forget your froggy legs when you go and start your writing. So very important to get that right until they are just in the habit of it. There is a song, I'm sure many of you know, there's a song for each letter sound, which is good fun for the children, they love them, and it provides a bit of language, and it also provides the pure sound. And so it's very helpful for the children to hear the sound in a pure way. We have materials that the children can use after they've been taught, and this one is from the Phonics handbook. Here is the action, so parents could understand what the action is, and here we put blending words when we can. And the children practice going over the dots and writing by themselves, using the lines to help them and colouring it in. This is from the Pupil Books. It's similar in many ways, the picture there to colour, the letter sounds to writing the letter. No words, just the letter at this stage, and then 4 words, and you identify what the pictures are and ask, can you hear us in them? And if they can't hear us in them, then let's push that to the side, see if you can. Anyhow, I'm not sure how, let's put that over there. Here you can see it's the tree that hasn't got this, and so you cross that out. In the Phonics handbook, we provide letters that you can cut out and stick into a little book, and then this little book can go home. It's a lot of hard work. Sticking in letters into a book for every child is a lot of work. And we used to get our older children in the school in their lunch hour to come along and stick it in for us. So that worked very well. And it goes home, and then the parents can see the letter that's been taught, and they can go through the book and help their children learn the letter sounds. And also I'm providing here a letter sound box. So if you wanted to print it off and cut them out, then you've got those available. I'll do more about that later. Here we have the next letter sound. So it's the second day. And of course, as soon as they arrive, you want to know, have they remembered that letter sound? So here, you hold up your flashcard, and then the children do the action, like the snake wiggling around, that was the action. And off you go. You revise the formation and you revise the sound it made. Then on the A, there's another story. And in the story comes the A sound. And this one is the family having a picnic, and the girl sees ants going up her arm, and she looks in alarm and screams, ah. And the action then is wiggling your fingers on the arm, ah. And then they have the formation. They learn how to form the letter correctly. And also the picture has a lot of things that have ah in it. So there's the dad and the ants and the jam and the rabbit. So you've got something that you can aim for and talk about, an apple there that starts with ah. Again, formation, show them on the board, do it in the air. If you do this air writing, you have to be very careful, because as a teacher, if they're looking at you, you have to do it in mirror writing. Now, if you find that difficult, and some people do, then it's better to turn around and do it on the board, right? But if you can do it in mirror writing, it's very helpful, because you can watch the children in front of you and seeing how well they're doing it. Whereas if you turned away to form it, you can't so easily. There's 2 little tricks to it, if you want to have some help there. One of the tricks is to remember how to do the caterpillar k. So here you have to actually, instead of going left to right, you go right round, up and down. So if you can get that caterpillar k in, that's one you have to learn, because then that helps you with the a and the d and the g and so on. And the other one is which way are you going? So usually we go left to right, but of course you've got to, because you're in mirror writing, go right to left and you go along. So with those two, that will help, because most of the letters, you've got a down first. And then you think, which way are you going? So for down first, which way are you going? That way, over and over. So it is helpful if you can master it and practice with a friend and make sure that you've got it correct before you do it. The formation, there we are, in the air, and it keeps the children busy as well, which is very useful. The auditory blending, make sure you have a go at that. You haven't got any words yet. And identifying the sounds in words. Well, again, it's not easy to identify all the sounds, so we just listen for the a. Is there an a in apple? Is there an a in dad? Well, can you hear it at the beginning? No, it's not at the beginning. Dad. Was it at the end? No, it wasn't at the end. Dad. It's in the middle. And it's the same with jam. It's not at the beginning, not at the end, it's in the middle. And you can even show them on the jam pot. There it is, jam. Then you've done your 4 skills. And then, of course, they go on and do their worksheet or whatever. And the worksheet can go home and the parents will know what is happening. So then you come to the 3rd day, or your 3rd session with the children, and it is the t letter sound. T. Again, revision, but this time, of course, you can hold up the s, and the children do the snake, and you can hold up the a, and they do the ants on the arm. Now we've got the t. You see the pattern? It's the same pattern for all the letter sounds. We start the story, and here the story is about the children are playing tennis. They went to see tennis being played originally, and they saw the head went from side to side watching as the ball went over the net. T, 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 said the ball, was the sound. And then the children, you can play tennis in the classroom if you like, batting the ball to each other, 2 children, and it goes t. Well, of course, we all know it doesn't go t, but the children just think it's lovely, and they learn that it does go t. And they then learn to form it correctly. And you tell them that this letter is tall, it starts above the others, and it goes down and then round the corner, unless you're doing print letters, which of course is available, Jolly Phonics in print letters, so you have your choice. And then the stick across, so down and the stick across. T, t. Now, you've done your revision, you've done the story, you've done the letter formation. Now, auditory blending, you do a bit more auditory blending. Can you see the t, e, n, t? And hopefully they'll see that tent. Or is there a t in teddy? Is there a t in cat? And where is it? Is it the beginning? No, it's at the end. That's right. And then this is the best bit. I love this because this is the day that you can show the children that it is something that you work out. Reading and writing is something that you work out. And they learn and understand it is a code today. And some, you can almost see the light dawn in their little eyes. Oh, yes, yes. So you model it for reading. And for modeling it, I like to do it, I say it, how to blend, and then we do it together, and then the children do it on their own. So we go to the word, and I say s-at, sat, and then we do it together, s-at, sat, and then you give them a go on their own, boom, 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 sat. And by modeling it, you're developing their ear, you're making it easy, so those that can't get it very easily don't feel too bad. They've had that modeling, they know the answer really. And so that helps enormously with the children. And then, of course, you can take this away and you've got another word to blend, which is at. So I say it, we say it, and you say it. And you can do the same thing, the model, the writing. You can say to the children, now I want to write the word sat. Listen carefully, sat. What can you hear? And get out of them the s, and then write it on the board. Sat, s. What comes next? S. And you get the a. And then sat, we're nearly there. S, a, and you get the t. And then when you've got it on the board, or wherever it is, you can then say, well, let's just check ourselves and blend it and see if it works. And then you all blend it together, sat, sat. And in doing that, they see the reversibility of how the code works. And for some, it's very reassuring that they can work things out. And I think this is where we keep our boys with us, because if you do whole word memorizing, the boys fare badly with it. But if you do it through the code, they do much better. In fact, they're often better than the girls. So that's important. Now, I'd like you to look at these words, because I want us to think of how many sounds are in these words. Now, what I want you to do, because we're going to have a break now, and while you're having your break, and we come back in 15 minutes, I'd like you to go through these words and think how many sounds are in those words. So if the word like found was there, you've got to think found. What sounds can I hear? F, ow, n, d. 4 sounds. And put the answer by the word. So while we have our little break, see if you can do that. I hope that's going to be all right with everybody. Is that?
So it's perfectly fine. So we're going for a 15 minutes break.
Yes, give you a little break and a little rest. Okay, and I think we have to be careful they don't log out. So anybody, just leave your computer, go and have your break, try and write how many sounds in those words, and then come back in 15 minutes time. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Please don't log out. Just stay there, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll be back in 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. See you about 12ish.
I see everyone is back. So are we ready to begin? And I see
Yes.
everybody has actually cracked the sounds in these words.
Have-
I already hooked on the screen and didn't go for a break. So excited to be there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, so we can hear you. You can begin.
I can begin. Okay, right. Well, I hope you had a good break, and we'll go over the words now, because this is quite important to be good at hearing those sounds in words. So, what did you get for your first one? Roast. Did you get o s t for? Hope so. Then number 2, who. That's a h, oo. 2 sounds in that word. Strong, st, o, ng. Sound. So s, x, 3 sounds. Then we've got the word the, and the sounds are the, 2 sounds, but the second one is what we call a schwa. It is a swallowed sound, and actually that's the most common sound in English, the schwa. It's a swallowed vowel, and we do a lot of that when we speak, swallow those vowels. It's not a the, and it's not a the, it's a the. And there's another one in marmalade. Listen, marmalade. R, O, A, D. 7 sounds in marmalade. Well, how did you do? Did you get this? Let me show you. Is that what you had? Anyhow, I hope so. Well done. And let's just remind ourselves where we were. We've taught the first 3 letter sounds. We've taught the children how to read them and how to write them. And we've also taught them how to work words out for blending. Only 2 of them, but we've taught them that. And how to listen for the sounds and identify those sounds. Maybe hear all the sounds. Although in the beginning, we perhaps don't do them all. We just do the is the sound in the word, that the main teaching. It's up to you, but the instructions are to wait until you've done about 4 or 5 before you do it. So the next thing is, of course, is to teach the next letter sound. Now, when we taught the a, we told them it was a vowel. Now we come to another vowel with I, and they meet our little character, Inky Mouse, I. And of course, the action is wiggling her whiskers on her nose, I. And she's a pet mouse, and she gets out of her cage. The boy doesn't shut it properly, and she rushes off and knocks over a bottle of ink. I know we don't use ink much nowadays, but there's not many words that start with I. Anyhow, she knocks over the bottle of ink and it goes all over her. And ever since then, she's been known as Inky. So she escapes and goes down the mouse hole. And then she meets all her little friends as well. So that's it. And again, the teaching always involves the story, the action, the formation, the working out of words. Now, of course, you can have two more words. You can have it and sit, or even its if you wanted to. And also you identify, can you hear the I in there? Can you hear the I in ink? Can you hear the I in inky? So there we are. Then we go on to the P sound. It's all the same pattern. Story, into the story comes the action. And for the P, the child puffs the candles on the cake for his birthday. P, P. Now you show them how to form it, and you tell them that this actually looks a tall letter, but it isn't. It starts in the same way as the others, but it goes under the line. And so they learn to form it under the line, bounce up, and push the ball along. So we do all the same kind of teaching for the P. And then, of course, you've got some more words that you can read now. So, and then we come to the N, the N sound. And so the children learn that the story is all about the girl and her granddad. And while they're fishing and she's running about, this noisy aeroplane comes and goes, mm. So the children stick their arms out and pretend they're a plane and go, every time they see that. So now you've got the 6 letter sounds, the first 6 letter sounds, and you've done more blending of words. You've done more listening for the sounds, holding up a finger for each sound and writing on the board as the children perhaps call the sounds out. So, you know, just generally doing a lot with those 6 letter sounds. And hopefully, by the time you get to here, you start to get an idea of who's going to have troubles and who's going to find it easy. The child who knows all 6 letter sounds, you're not going to have any troubles. It's nearly always the case. The troubles aren't going to come, especially if you've been tuning them in to hear those sounds so that they can actually see how the code works. So, but the child who's perhaps only learned 1, alarm bells go ringing. And so we ought to really work hard to identify these children as early as possible and just do some extra practice with them. There's nothing wrong with them except that they've got a rather weak memory and they need to have extra practice. So there we go. There's lots of different ways that you can actually practice the letter sounds, but doing the sort of reading, the blending and the segmenting, is always practicing those letter sounds. And so it's very useful. You're developing the skills, but also practicing the letter sounds. We get ideas from lots of different people. And I got this idea from somebody in Ireland and started to use it in my classroom. And it's very, very useful. I used to have the children on the carpet in front of me. And then they get into a big circle. And I would give each one of them a piece of paper. You know, you can make these on computers and churn them out. Or a piece of card on thin card is even better. Put a star there, because that's where you always start the words, to remind them, start on the left. And then make little letter sound squares. So you chop them up. And you give each child in their envelope one of these grids and 6 letter sounds. And the idea is to play regularly, segmenting, choosing the right letters for the sounds and blending. So you might say, now listen, I want you to pick up the T and put it in the first box. The one by the star, that's right. And then next I want you to pick up the A and put it next to it in the next box. And then last of all, I want you to pick up the P and put it at the end. Now, let's see what we have got. Let's blend the sounds together. And so then you go T, A, P, tap. Well done, well done. Put them all back. And then you can make another word, or you can say, right, this time I want you to make the word all by yourself. I want you to make the word pin in the squares. Now think what the first sound is, then the next one, then the next one. And then you can see who's getting an idea of this and who's not. So you can be very observant. And hopefully you get the p and then the I and then the n, and then you blend it, p, I, n, pin. Well done. If you got that, give yourselves a clap. Give yourselves a pat on the back, whatever. It's word building. And you only we only do it with the first 6 letter sounds. That stops it being too complicated. And if you can understand it with those 6 letter sounds, then you can, excuse me, it's croaky. If you can do it with the 6 letter sounds, then you can do it with any of the others. So you've got the power there. So this is a typical sample lesson. So the children, for each lesson, the teacher revises the previous teaching. So the teacher goes through the flashcards and they all do the actions. And she might say, well, let's do it with the boys, let's do it with the girls, or let's do it with this group, let's do it with that group. So you've done a little bit of practicing. And then you introduce your story, and this time it's the k sound. And the story is that the Spanish dancer is clicking her castanets and their children are going k, k, k. And there's your sound. K. As I said, you learn things from other people. Some teachers like to do k up in the air for the caterpillar k, k, and the hands down for the kicking k, because k is an unusual one. There are 2 ways of representing the k sound. And there's the C with a k and the K with a k. And although we don't say the names, the children learn that each one of those says k. And if you get 2 together in a word like sack, you only say the sound once. So sack, sack. So you tell the story, they see the action, then you show them how to form that caterpillar k. Getting that right, that formation is very helpful. The kicking k is tall, and you see at the end you have a kicking leg. So down, up a little bit, round, and a kicking k. If it's print, then you do in and out. So whatever system you're working on. And then you provide words for the children to blend. And you get all the instructions in the teacher's notes. And so they practice. Now here, of course, it's straightforward with picnic, skip. But when you come to pick, they've got to learn to go p, I, and say the k sound once. It's not p, I, k, k. They just go p, I, k, pick, and k, I, s, kiss. So you're teaching them that when 2 letters have the same sound, you only say it once. And then identifying the sounds in a few words. So you might sort of say, well, what are the sounds in cat, k, at, pick, p, I, k. Doesn't take long. And in the beginning, you model it. And then after a little while, just go through a few without modeling. So they just straight away get there. Now, of course, when you come to the k, you get more words. And this is our new word bank. Now, I've shown you the word bank on paper, and that's provided for you. But this new word book, which I'm very proud of, has just been published. And it's got advantages that the other one hasn't, in that here you can see it. Oh, let me see if I can move that over. It says words for blending, segmenting, and dictation. So this is words that you can reliably ask the children to read. You can ask them to hear the sounds, and you can call them out for dictation. Then next is words for blending only. Now in this one, we avoid the k for writing, because the children, when they come to the k at this stage, don't know whether to put a C, a K, or a CK. So at this stage, we only use these for blending. If you want to do dictation, use those ones at the top. Then we have a few challenging words that are awkward, and the awkward bit is underlined. So the awkward bit here is the double letter. In ink, the awkward bit is that the N, it has actually an ng sound, but it's written with just an N. So ink, ink. So that's just a little snag to say, so, you know, it might throw them a little bit. And attack, well, we don't say attack. We swallow the first bit, and it's a schwa. Attack, attack. It's a swallow, it's a schwa. And then we've even got some little phrases that you can start. So some of those that are quite good, you can write them out on a piece of paper and get them to read those. With blending practice, the words can be on flashcards, like here. You can put them on little bits of card, coloured card, and drop them on the table for the children. Or you can give them a list. They could take their list home. And the words from your word bank are just handy. So you can make your own materials quite easily. So the more opportunity you give the children to develop this blending is so important. Sometimes you hear teachers say, oh, but they can't blend. Well, they all can blend if they can speak, because a baby babbles with sounds and learns to put the sounds together to articulate words. But, and then as time goes on, it's just automatic, and they don't realize, and they sort of lose that ability and have to be taught how to do it from letters. So here you are, you've got your different ways, and the more blending. So those who say, oh, they can't blend, it means you haven't actually managed to succeed. So go to a bit of that auditory blending, just two pictures, which one is it, and so on. So some you might have to do a little bit of extra work with, but on the whole, it's the quantity that you do in the class. So do regularly, every day, do some, but not just to the whole class, because you know when you've got the whole class, the fast ones just call it out quickly, and the not so good ones just copy them. And you want to avoid that. So you need to sort of get your group that are not quite so good and do it with them as well, so that they're getting it, or even down to pairs. Even if you've got a child who's good at blending and one that's not very good, well, encourage the one that's good to, you know, listen to the poorer one and help the poorer one. And they're very good at that. And also, you know, listening individually and sometimes helping individually. So the more you can do in blending practice, the easier you will find it later on. And the secret with blending and not memorizing is that when a word has been blended a few times, it becomes known. And then we don't need to blend it. And we only use that blending technique when we come to words that we don't know. And then it should be absolutely automatic. And developing blending until it is totally automatic, I like to liken it to driving a car. You know, in the beginning, when we are driving, the gear changing is so difficult, and we just concentrate on changing those gears. But then after a while, it starts to get easier. And then after a bit longer, and after you've been driving, perhaps, you know, for months, it's just automatic. You just don't think about it. You concentrate on where you're going and admiring the countryside or whatever. But you just forget about it and you just do it. And that's what we want to get the children to, just blend it every time they meet something that they're stuck with. Just do it. And that's what we mean by doing it till automaticity. And of course, actually, once you've got your driving and your gear changing until it's automatic, you can stop driving for a long time and you can come back and you will still be able to do it. You might be a bit rusty, but you will still be able to do it. And that's the same. Once you've got to automatic blending, it's there forever. And, you know, even if they leave it off for a bit, it will still be there. So that's what we are aiming for, masses of blending. And then the writing, of course, is the listening for the sounds, segmenting, this oral segmenting, calling out words and holding up the fingers, very, very important, but also word building. Now, I showed you that word building with just 6 letters and 3 little squares. This was another way over here, this chart here. This is what I used to use years ago. I made it out of cardboard and I had the letters on bits of card, and I put the vowels along the top and some consonants along the bottom, and then we would make words in the middle. I'd call the word out and a child would have to come and put the letters out for peg, and then I say, oh, I don't want peg anymore, I want pig, and somebody will have to come out and change the F for the I. So it's sort of all the time showing them how to build words and at the same time revising the letter sounds. You can do it much more easily with magnetic letters, and in Jolly Phonics we've got magnetic letters. So if anybody, and you have a magnetic board, say the sounds as quickly as they can. There is a technique to blending. The first one a little louder and then the others quickly afterwards. So, you know, sun. So blending in the head. As we go along, we come to these sounds. And the interesting thing about these is that they have 2 sounds. They're 2 letters, but they also have 2 sounds. And so we've written them in 2 sizes, just to start off with. So the first smaller size one is the U, like in cook and book, and the fatter ones are oo, like in moon and soon. So we have for the story a cuckoo clock, and the cuckoo comes out, ooh, 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 ooh. The head goes up, and then the bird comes out, and the head goes down. So ooh, ooh. And then, of course, the children can do the blending of the words. But of course, in reality, in books and on our cards and everything, they're not in 2 sizes. So the children have to learn that when they come to this double O, if that oop doesn't work, try oo. If one way doesn't work, try another. And there's a lot of that in phonics. And it's the same thing with the TH. The TH has got 2 sounds. There's this is called a voiced sound, because if you put your hand on your throat, I hope you can see me, and just go, the whole throat vibrates. That's called a voiced sound. If you do the other sound, which is like in thin and thumb, then it's unvoiced. Do that, and the voice doesn't vibrate. The neck doesn't vibrate. So the children like doing this to feel the difference. The is for words like that and then and this, and the blowy one, the unvoiced one, is thin, thumb, thick. These sounds are not in everybody's language necessarily. Adults sometimes can't say them, which is why you get some very unusual accents. And there are some sounds in other languages that we don't use in English, and I can't say them. Adults, once they've gone past a certain age, can't learn new sounds. But children, young children can. A baby can repeat and learn to repeat any sound that they hear. So any sound from any language, they will be able to learn that. It's a skill that development that reduces as you get older. And so some people can't say the and the, but if the children hear it, they will be able to do it. Give them enough practice. And the story for this are the naughty clowns. And one clown is a little naughty and a little rude, and he puts his tongue out a little bit. That's the voiced one. And the other one is very rude, and he sticks his tongue out a long way. So the children like doing that, pretending they're being a little rude, naughty clown. And again, the same thing. When they come to the TH, they're in the normal size, so they try off and choose the right one. Especially if it's in the words in their vocabulary, they do that quite easily. If it's not in their vocabulary, then the teacher will have to help them and tell them what it is. Now we come to tricky words, and we do need to have a way of coping with tricky words. Tricky words are very common words that we use a lot in our language, but they have a letter sound correspondent that is rather awkward, a bit in it that's tricky. Now, they can be blended. So if I was blending with the knowledge the children have got, the first one would be we, me, he, she. No, we can't do the she yet because we have, well, it should have been taught better. Anyhow, was, he, the, to, do. So they can be blended, but that gives a wrong pronunciation. So what we need to do is to help them by looking for the tricky bit. Well, the I, it's a capital letter. They will have seen the capitals on their worksheets and they will know a little bit about that and that they've got the same sound. We don't concentrate on them much in the beginning, but they gradually learn that they've got the same sound. Well, that's a capital I, and it says I, which is a nice, easy one to learn. Then the next one we teach is the, and we don't do this until we've taught the TH with the sound. So then the, well, I'm sorry, that's the. We say the. It's a bit swallowed, so you just got to learn that. Now, the advantage of doing it like the and the is that when they come to spell it, they can think, oh, yes, there. They remember that more easily. Just like was. Well, I'm afraid was is was. And they've got to learn the w is sensible, but the a has an o sound, and even the s has a z sound, was. It's more a z than an s. There's a lot of words that have that. And the children soon adjust to that, and they learn that as was. It's much easier to memorize that with that way of introduction than it is when you don't know how the letter sounds work. We have some tricky word hats, and we can stick the words onto the tricky word hat and have a bit of fun with it. Make displays of these tricky words up on the walls. So you adjust the pronunciation when you've blended them, and then it's just regular practice and dictation, trying to get them to spell them correctly. So there we are with the. Now, in our little word bank book, the new book, we can actually start to use some of the tricky words because the tricky word, the has been taught now. So now we can have the 10th shop on the street. So you could dictate those as well. You can read them, but you could also dictate them. You just have to check that some of these you have to help them with dictation if they have something unusual about them, like presence. You know, it's not a z in there, presence, and the is a swallow bit. So you can give them a bit of help there, but you can ask them to read them as well. So there you are. You've got plenty of things you can do. And this is some of the things that I've done. So I'd make up little sentences with what the children have been taught so far, and then print them out and then snip around them and then have them for the children to read. And the same with the phrases. And so if you look at your book, you can see, you can reliably ask the children to read these phrases and sentences for reading, and with a bit of care for writing. Teaching writing through dictation. This is absolutely the easiest and best way to introduce the children to writing. Too often, certainly in English-speaking schools, the children were just expected to pick it up And they could put whatever squiggles they like, and, you know, they could pretend they were writing and it was acceptable. Well, it isn't. Writing is a difficult skill, and it needs very careful, structured, step-by-step introduction. And so, of course, the first thing, and we say listen and write for the children. Dictation is a bit of a sort of academic word, isn't it? More for secondary, but actually listen and write is very good for little children, whatever age, so long as, you know, about 4 years old. If they're below 4, you will have to toughen their fingers and make sure they can colour before you ask them to write. But first of all, you dictate a few of the letter sounds you've taught. Well, that teaches you, do they know them or don't they? And then once you've taught them how to hear some of those sounds, you can also dictate a few little words, and then maybe a little phrase, a hot dog. And then you can go into sentences using tricky words that have been taught. So now you can dictate a little phrase or read a little phrase, the thin string. You see, I avoid using the CK, the C or the K for dictation. And the book fell with a thump. You might have to help them with the book and sort of say, what cut do you think we're going to have on the end of book? And hopefully somebody from the class will get that. Gradually, if you follow the teaching in the manual, there were some rules linked to that, linked to the vowels as to when you use it. But in the beginning, you help them with that. So you see, when you're dictating, you're all the time practicing the essential skills. You're practicing the letter sounds, you're practicing writing letters, you're keeping them busy, you're practicing blending, because when they've written the word, they can blend it to see if they've got it right. And you're also practicing listening for the sounds and in the words and putting them down. So you're just all the time practicing. And then when you get to tricky words, you're practicing writing those as well. And so at the end of your initial letter sound teaching, that's those first 42 letters, what has been achieved? Well, you will have taught 42 letter sounds and hopefully know how many have been learnt by your children. There's some you don't even need to test. You just know it. They're so good. But you soon get to know the ones who are weak, and will then look at them and find out who's, you know, how many they know and how many they don't know. And then you know what you've got to do. How good is the skill of blending words, phrases, and sentences? Are they fluent, steady, or weak? And you will have that range. Every class has it. Sorry, let's go. Oh no, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. Oops. Teach them how to form the letters correctly, and get them to write words, phrases, and sentences, and see whether they're fluent, steady, or weak. Now they are ready. You have prepared them for the wonderful day that they can have reading books. And hopefully all of them will get a reading book. Now, I love this chart because it demonstrates exactly what it's like in a class. And it's like the class, every class I've had this happen. There's that little 5% that seem to have learnt to read and blend and do everything before, you know, they were born even. They are so fast. They learn, they pick up words, everything goes in the right direction for them. Then there's about 35%. If you did whole word learning, they would still get there. They wouldn't find it as easy. The top ones would manage with whatever method you teach them. Then you've got this next, the orange group, 40 to 50%. Now, these children are the wobbly ones if you teach with whole words. They're wobbling. And this bottom, 10 to 15%, if you used whole word learning, you've created that bottom group. They just cannot learn those the words. They even struggle with letter sounds. Now, that means that the green ones could actually be taught any other way. You could teach differently, but there is no point in doing that, because that group, when you teach them the code and how to work out the words, they go even faster. So, there's no point. And that's because, now, why is it that that top group are able to do it when you do all your whole word or your rote learning, and that bottom group can't? It's very much down to two things. One is memory. Now, you know very well, I think every teacher knows very well, that you can hold words up for children to learn, and some find it quite easy. The next day they know it again, and others just take ages, and you keep on telling them and you keep on telling them. It's a bit like that with numerals sometimes. So how is it then? Because we do know from science that there is a limit to how much the brain can retain. If you imagine that every word, there was no link to the sounds whatsoever, and you had to memorize everything, the maximum amount that children and adults would be able to memorize is about 2,500, 3,000. And of course, we've got thousands and thousands of words in English, so that doesn't work at all. That's really a very poor way of doing it. So how do these top ones do it? Well, they have that good memory. They get off to a good start if they've had whole words, and then they start to see the code themselves because they've got the good ability to hear the sounds in words. And they might see the word mummy and see the in the middle, the at the end, the at the beginning and the in the middle. And then they might see sort of mat, and there's a there. And they sort of start to see, oh, if I go and they start to work it out. Perhaps that they see a chips. That's got two letters, church. Well, there's a ch at the beginning and a ch at the end. And they bit by bit learn to crack the code themselves. So these are natural code breakers. The next bit of the greens, well, with a little bit of phonics and a bit of encouragement. So they used to, in the past, just teach the sounds of the alphabet. And then the children would get the first letter sound and had to sort of work out the rest just by the context. But they clicked in, but then it fails these others. So if you want to be successful with all the children, teach in the way that is best for the bottom group, and you'll find the others fly. And the best way is through the code, through Jolly Phonics, and you can catch those children as well. So I think it's a useful one, and that happens in every class. Every class I've got those fast ones and then those slow coaches, but once they crack the code, the slow coaches, they can give you a nice surprise. They get there. So what reading books do we use? Well, one of the nice things now, we've got e-reader. All our reading books are e-readers now available. And I think the very good news is that they are free at the moment because of the pandemic until the 31st of May. So you might like to take this opportunity to look at them carefully and see and use them with children and help them through these difficult times. But choosing the right reading books is very important. You've got to select a sensible one for the child. And it must be decodable. Every time you put a book in front of a child and expect them to read, and it's got words they can't work out, you start to lose that bottom group. And you can provide giving a child a reading book before they can blend. You'd never give a child a book to read if they can't blend. That is so important. And if you follow those rules, you prevent the reading problems developing. Because we know that if you ask the child and reading doesn't feel good, they then don't want to do it. Whereas this way, by really giving them a lot of skills of how to do it, you get higher results. So this is how the structure progression works. So you're looking to your first reading books. Well, you've taught the 42 letter sounds, you've taught those 12 tricky words. The books now have a few words on the page and a larger print, and you've got nearly 2,000 words available. So you can get a reasonable story when you've got access to that number of words. But this is when you make your choice. And you want to think, well, are they good at blending? And has it gone well? Do they know their letter sounds well? And you will know them. Well, then, if they have, then straight away onto the red level readers, because they use all 42 letter sounds and the 12 tricky words. And you have a choice here for giving the books out. Some books have an Inky Mouse on here. That's all about Inky Mouse and her friends. Then the snake means it's general fiction. And Phonic, the computer, that's non-fiction. So you've got 3 styles of books, 6 of each, 18 altogether. And that's for the children who haven't really got any problems. They can enjoy reading those. They can take them home and read them to parents. But for those who aren't doing so well, there are the orange level readers now. And these are useful because the first ones just use the first 6 letter sounds. Now, of course, you can't get a very good story with 6 letter sounds and so few words that you can use, but it is something they can do. And so they think it's absolutely lovely and they can get a book. And I'll show you how to help the ones that are even poorer than that in a minute. So what about the red level? Well, the nice thing with 42 letter sounds, the knowledge, you've got more words that you can access. So in these books, words like these come along. So if you've taught them blending well, they'll just go ground, strongest, sleeping squirrel, and they'll get them. So, and of course you get more interesting stories and they're off to a good start. The tricky words are at the front, so parents can practice those with the children. And at the back, we have got some comprehension questions as well. So those are for the confident, straightforward children. For those who are struggling, we do have 2 lots of little books, and they are actually word books. So here we've got read and see books. There's a little flap here that goes over the picture, and then the word is on the left-hand side, and the children have to go and then they lift the flap and have a look at the picture and see if they're right. So they can do that on their own. You have to be rather strict with your children as to how to handle them with great care. So the flap is always put back properly, and they keep the books really well. These other new books are little word books. Basically, it starts off with just the 6 letter sounds, and it's just words. So here is a bit further on, and they need to have been taught these letter sounds, and so they just practice jam, and they find the jam. Loaf, their words, the pictures are there, but the pictures don't give them the clue. And here you can see a little mouse with 2 dots, and whoever's listening to the children, a parent or the teacher, says egg. What sounds can you hear? And the 2 dots mean the 2 sounds, egg. So there's some little activities in those those could go home with those children who are much slower and just need that extra reinforcement. So you've got choices. So now the teaching carries on, and you've got the progression. So we look carefully at what is being taught here. These are the alternative ways that I showed you before. When that letter Y with an E sound has been taught and some more tricky words, then the yellow level are available. So you get alternative spellings. And in the meantime, if you look at your teaching book and everything that's recommended, the children learn about the capital letters, how to form them, they make sounds. They learn about vowels, which supports the spelling. They learn more tricky words. And this is when they start to sing the alphabet, say the alphabet. We offer the alphabet in quarterly groups because we're preparing them for dictionary work. They also learn that the letters have names and that it's not much use for reading and writing, but they're the grown-up way of talking about the names, about the letters. And they start independent writing. So that's the next 2 terms with the Pupil Books 2 and 3. So here we are. This is the alternative spelling, the first one they learn. This letter Y, when they learned it first, it was a consonant and it was a Y, like in yes. Now they have to learn that at the end of slightly longer words, 2 syllables and more, if you see the Y there, it's got an E sound. So S-A-N-E. There's lots of words that use that. So, and then there's some more tricky words, and then they're going to be ready for the yellow level readers. So there you are, with the E sound, daddy, happy, silly. And the next tricky words. Now there's slightly more on the page and the print goes a little bit smaller. So you're building up. Now, at this stage, you might think, oh, they're not absolutely confident here. And the next stage is quite hard. I could do with some more decodable readers. Now, there are other publishers that have published decodable readers. And on my website, I go through a section and I'll show you how to do that later. And you can see about other decodable readers. And if you see that other decodable readers have taught what you have taught, then feel free to use those because that's just more reading practice. And I've put this one here. They're called Pupil Books. And there's a link there. And these, if you've got a child that's a huge struggler, it's worth having a set of these because the progression is very, very, very careful and slow, step by step by step by step, nibble by nibble. You still need to wait till you've taught the 42 letter sounds. And then and you've done the other books that I said, the word books and so on, and the orange level, then if there's still trouble, try these ones as well. And they were researched back in America years ago when phonics was in favor. And the research was very positive of the results from this. So it's very carefully done, well worth it. And they laid in a cupboard somewhere, hidden for years and years. And then somebody found them. And then phonics was coming back. And so they brought them back. But I've got great respect for them. But if they're okay with our reading books, then this next structure is learning the alternative spellings. These are the hop over E's or the magic E or the split digraphs, whatever they're called. So there's another consonant goes between them. The 2 letters are still needed to make that sound. And so the children have to go, and because they see the E there, they say A. 8, eam, I'm, own. And we sort of say the magic comes out of that E and jumps over and changes the short vowel to the long one. So you'll see that's all in the books. So it's well worth looking at that. Now the green level can be read. So the same little groups of non-fiction and fiction. And now they can work out the magic E words. They've got some more tricky words and the sentences are a bit longer and the print goes smaller. So you're gradually taking them along. Then and in fact, often with the green ones, you will start to notice that they can actually start to read other books. You'll see them picking them up and reading them because they're close to cracking their code completely. But they do still need these 14 alternative spellings. They're quite important, and some more tricky words. So now they're ready for the blue readers. And here you've got interesting, of course, the more words you can use, the more interesting become the stories. And the 14 alternative spellings need to be known, the tricky words. And this is definitely where fluent readers are able to read anything that is suitable for their age. So they can cope with any of the books because there's enough code cracked to adjust their pronunciation. I'll show you how that works. And they become independent readers. But you want to wait until they're good before they become independent readers. And then this last little group, these are fairly new. These are non-fiction and all with photos. So it's another alternative. But this time they use these last 6 alternative spellings. So the PH with a F, the K that has a S sound when it is followed by the letters E, I, or Y. If you get those vowels after the K, it nearly always goes S. That's their clue, and they learn that. And then here's the G, but when you get the letters E, I, or Y, those vowels, after the G, it goes J. So like in gentle, giant, gymnastics. And then we've got the 3 airs, air, air, and air, different ways of writing air. So with that knowledge, they can cope with these books very well. And they're independent readers. Now, how are they going to cope with the words that are more awkward later on? Now, in reading, we don't encourage the children to use the context to read the word in the beginning because it's decodable. It can be worked out. But as they go on, you show them that sometimes the words don't give us the pronunciation exactly, and you have to do a little tweak, a little adjustment. Now let's look at the first lot of adjustments. So if you have these 3 words, actually you don't know how to read these because you know they can be either read or read, and you don't know which one it is. And it's only the context that will tell you of what you're reading as to which it will be. It's the same with live and live. Now, if with the word crowd, you don't know, the OW has 2 sounds, an O and an ow, and you don't know which one. But knowing it can go crowd or crowd, and then the context will give the child the answer. If they don't have that in their language, then you're going to have to guide them which one it is. It's crowd here. They start a little tweaking a bit earlier on, with a word like lemon, lemon. We don't say lemon, we go lemon. It's a schwa, it's a swallowed bit. And so the children have to learn, we say lemon. If around, the there. We don't go around, although, if they did, that would still be okay at this, this little bit. But the schwa, around. We don't say doctor, we go doctor. It's the swallow. Those are little tweaks. And the children, if they've got them in their vocabulary, they don't bat an eyelid. But what is useful is when it comes to spelling and you've got the word around, the first sound you hear is and the fact that they've blended around a few times, that helps them to remember that it starts with an A, an A. Then a larger tweak. It's not the largest, but it is larger. And if you've got this, you would blend woman, like you go woman, woman. Now, if that was in a sentence, the old woman liked vinegar, you might, some of them will twig to that. Even the word vinegar, it would, if you were blending it, you would say vinegar. But with the context, the old woman liked vinegar, it's a bit of a jump, and you might have to help. Water would be waiter or watter. Opposite, adventure. So yeah, you need a bit of help with those, and context can often help a great deal. Otherwise, you have to be guided But once a child has been guided, they find that very easy to remember. And there's lots of lovely research about, and I do encourage anybody who wants to find out more is to go and look at the science and find out. And there's a link here. This is Keith Stanovich talking, and he's very interesting, his writing. And he basically here is saying that there's the Matthew effect, which is the children who can read easily read more and they get better and the gap gets bigger. The children who can't read easily, it's horrible, they don't like it and they avoid it and they read very little. And you'll find that what one child reads in 2 days, another child takes a whole year to read. Now, and he says as well, it is the quantity of reading a child does that will dictate how far they go. I was surprised it wasn't quality in there, but I think it doesn't matter. It's the amount of reading they do. And of course, if you read a lot, you then take yourself to better quality. It's a natural thing. You'll go past the simple Enid Blyton or whatever, and you will go and look at more quality books because you like that better. So, but it's the quantity. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to find ways of encouraging children to read as much as possible. Once they've got that blending and they've got the skill of reading and they've got some language as well, and they're off, they're independent, it's the quantity of books that we encourage them to read, that so long as they're at their level of understanding, then just encourage them to read as much as possible, whether it's through libraries, books from jumble sales, or anything that you can do to encourage them to practice. And nowadays they're on their computers and things, and you will find they will naturally start reading instructions and what they've got to do and bits and pieces. So there's a lot of print around nowadays, but if we can encourage them to read as much as possible and just for pleasure, because if you can do it easily, it usually is very pleasurable. And so that's what we want the children to do. Make sure that we don't give them reading books too easily and too quickly, so that when they do go to the books, they can do it and they just get faster and faster. That was the reading. We've taken you through the reading, but let's just have a quick look at the writing. We have said this before. Basically in that first 10 weeks, you've got to teach those letter sounds, the correct pencil hold and letter formation, and then identifying the sounds in words. This segmenting is so important. And then dictation. We need to practice spelling the tricky words, because if we're going to do sentences, we need to practice that, and capital letters as well. And that comes into the materials as well. With learning the tricky words, well, we try and blend it first. Ow, yow. Oh, that doesn't make the word. Word is you. The y is sensible, the ow is silly. And you've just got to learn that in you, you've got to put out OU. And then they can practice by hiding up the word. They look what's tricky, and then they go over the dots and practice it. And then the next time they cover it all that up, and try and write it by themselves. Then they cover it all up and have another go. So by doing it 3 times, it helps to put it into memory. It's the same with all learning. If you do it 3 times, you've got more chance of getting there. So with the your, well, it should say yow, but it says your. And this is the awkward bit, the O-U-R. So you've got to know that hour. When you want to write your, you write yow. And, they have to find their own way to memorize it and check themselves. And here there's a bit more about capital letters. So they can then write sentences. And that dictation, again, is the most effective way I've ever come across. And I once had a class that only had one term for their first term, and then they were into the year one. And I wanted them to catch up quite quickly. And so we did a crash course with the carrying on the teaching. They'd only had one term of Jolly Phonics. And so I made these dictation sentences that used only the 42 letter sound and the tricky words I'd taught them. And then I gave them as homework. I put, only for the children who could do it, I'd put a little bit in a book and send it home and ask the parents to call it out. And I had the highest increase in their ability of writing. It was enormous. But of course, I didn't send home sentences for any child who couldn't even write words. There's no point sending home homework if the child can't do it in the class. The point of homework is just to give them extra practice and to bring fluency. If they can do it, they will want to do it for homework, and they're very proud and they bring it back and they get their star, and it all works out very well. If you give it to them and it's too early and they struggle and the parents are trying hard to get them to do the homework because they're being awkward and difficult, the whole thing goes wrong. And in fact, I never made them. They could choose it, and they were honored if they'd been chosen, they were allowed to do it. And so they did it, and they liked their stars and so on. So it's a psychological thing, and it's so powerful. I must tell you that enormously. I cover that a bit on my website. So go from dictating letter sounds and then progressing to phrases and then to sentences. So it's very straightforward. It's best, I think, if you can provide lines. These lines are available on my website if anybody wants them, so that the children really do get to understand that the body of the letter is the same size. There's just a few sticks that go up and a few tails that come down. So it's giving that, and that the letters go close together with no bumping, and then you leave a space. And through dictation and calling words out or sentences, you enable the children to write, neat handwriting. Very, very useful, and joining quite early. We now have these letter sound strips, and you can see the children could have this on their table while they're writing, and if they've forgotten how to write one of the letter sounds, they've got a little bit of a hint there. So these are the alternatives, and this is the 42. Useful bit of help. This is what it looks like, dictation. You can see here that the double O is being practiced. We join the digraphs. If you've got the print version, you don't, but we do join the digraphs in the precursive. And then they're just practicing joining, which is a helpful thing, and it reminds them that the two letters make one sound. So you can dictate them: room, boot, roof, food, and so on. And there's a little sentence. So they should know the word my. Well, this child went a bit wrong there. Got it right there, missed it there. But that's good, gets a star, lovely. This is typical after 7 months to a year. You know, they can say what they want to say. Now, of course, if they haven't got English, then that's much more difficult, because if you can't think in the language, you haven't got anything to say in it, you can't do independent writing, and you want to stick to dictation longer then. But this is what I love. You see, this child has only had the 7 months. I slept at my friend's. I play with my pram. I went for a walk. I went to this is meant to be pictures too. And then I whoosh, instead of watch, I whoosh and here, Black Beauty. All incorrect, a lot of incorrect spelling, but you can read it. I saw the ducks in a pond. I went to the woody bears, that's meant to be. Now, I think that's delightful. They are setting out. And of course, you have to accept that if you ask a child to write independently, they cannot possibly write it accurately. It's only dictation where you can, manipulate it so that they can accurately spell, and you avoid any words where there's discrepancy. But here you can read it. It's a lovely start. I did worry, if we allow them to do that and they're writing the words incorrectly and spelling them, will they be bad at spelling? So I used to test the children when they were about 7 years old, and I nearly always found that the average for the class, they were 7 when they were tested, and the average was 8.4 or 5, that kind of thing. So a lot of them could spell brilliantly. There were still some that were below their age, but actually I think that they probably would be below their age if you you know, just spelling is so much harder for them because they haven't got the memory for it. But you know, at least they can say what they want to say, and as children read more, the spelling improves. So in the second year, we would be more picky on picking up some words. But at the moment, look at that, ducks. Okay, they haven't learned that when you've got a plural with a k sound, it's not an X, it's a CK and an S. But, you know, that all builds up that knowledge. And the testing shows that on average, the children are much further on than normal. These are some Irish examples from Northern Ireland. And, you know, you can see exactly they can write what they want to write. It's just lovely. And if you think that, oh, a child that's from a very disadvantaged household won't be able to do it, don't write them off. We had this child's brother, and I have to say we struggled. And the educational psychologist tested him and said he has one of the lowest IQs he's met. So a very, very poor IQ and poor memory, poor everything. The poor boy had a lot going against him, but he learned to read. You know, it just took much longer, and he was never as understanding as the others. But his brother we saw, and he was coming into my class, and I thought, oh crumbs, he still had a bottle of tea, and he was 4 years old then, and I thought, dear, oh dear, but actually I could not have been more wrong. This boy had absolutely no trouble whatsoever. Everything I taught him, he learned the letter sounds, he learned how to put the sounds together and everything. No problem. And this is after 5 weeks. So he's joining. He can write his news on Saturday. Me and my mum and Douglas went to the barber's, and I went, now this is interesting, first. Now he's one of these children who says, instead of saying 3, we'll say free. He does, the TH is a F always. And he knows he gets it wrong, so he's overcompensated and thinks he's wrong and put TH. And I had to show him it was an F and not the TH. But and so I went first, and he made me laugh, and I had it all shaved off, and my brother had a step, and then we went to see Nanny, and Dad was there, and I asked her, and she said yes, and she got me a drop of water. Then we went home. Just lovely, absolutely. You know, never underestimate a child. We were so wrong there. So after this, well, it's more going into the jolly grammar, which of course is for another day. Hopefully you will get all your children reading and writing by the end of the year. Some will be able to do a page, some will be just getting a sentence or two from dictation, but hopefully they'll all be understanding that there is a code to the reading, and that you know, you have to work out the words, and there is a way, and you know, that's very empowering. But Jolly Grammar teaches all about punctuation, grammar, spelling, coming, you know, taking phonics on for the spelling rather than the reading. So overcoming problems, you will have, there will always be some children have problems because they are slower than the others. And we know who are struggling, but what we don't always do as teachers is ask why. What is causing it? And first of all, you have to say to yourself, is it comprehension, or is it decoding, or is it both? If it's decoding the problem, and often that is, then check the letter sound knowledge and the ability to blend words. And nearly always I find when I check, if I get a child to assess, they haven't got the letter sound knowledge. And they often are slow at the blending, they haven't done nearly enough, and they aren't experienced with it. And with the writing, well, they still need the letter sound knowledge. They need pencil control, and they need the letter formation and phonemic awareness. And you can test that and see that for yourself. I have prepared for some assessment sheets. So every half term, if you wanted to do a serious assessment to see what has been learnt and what they can do, then you can use something like this. So you ask the children if they can read those letter sounds, and you make a note of any that can't be, they don't know. Then can they read these words? They've got to be able to blend them. They're words that they might not have met in their reading, so it usually shows up. If they can't blend, it usually shows up there. Then you dictate these words over here and see how many they can write by themselves or not, and that will show up other things, and then you can put some comments about it. So that's the first half term, and then there is an assessment for every half term, and I will provide that for downloading if you want to. I wouldn't use this for all the classes, as it takes time, and it's better to just keep this for the children that are struggling. You know the ones, and you want to know what they don't know so that then you can put it right. How do you put it right? Well, in a class of a lot of children, it's very difficult. If you have an assistant, which you often don't, but we do often in the UK, then the assistant can help there. If you have a parent who comes in and likes to help in the classroom, which we do quite a lot of in the UK, then they can help. If you haven't got that, and you have got a child who finds it all easy, you can buddy them up with somebody that finds it more difficult. And it's that buddy's job to make sure that they've learned those letter sounds and to help them blend. And it's good for the person doing the teaching, and it's good for the child. So in the end, that's what's got to be learned, and it's nice and straightforward. And I love it compared to when we used to do memorizing. How do you help when they can't remember it? There's nothing much you can do except keep on and on and on. And it's just cruelty almost to some children. So this way, it's much, much easier for the children, and you could, and you know exactly what you've got to teach. It's fun, and you can see straight away where it's going wrong and who doesn't know what. And if you can just keep that in mind and help that bottom group, you're going to get them all through. This is what I mentioned earlier, a letter sound box. I'm providing this in the materials so that if you did want to make a little box for the children who are struggling, you can then test them on the letter sounds they know and put them in the box. And then as soon as you've added another letter sound that you think they know, that goes in the box. And then the box can go home and the parents can go through it. Or if that isn't possible, your buddy, the child's buddy can go through that with the child. And basically, it's the ones they know. So all you're doing is practicing it for getting fluency, and then teaching the others and adding another one and trying to make that fluent as well. So very useful for helping those who are struggling, and making the best you can in your classroom. So one last thing. This is a product I would like produced by the publisher, by Chris Jolly. I haven't got it yet, but you can make your own, and you can see the instructions on the Jolly Learning website, and you just need different coloured card, and you print it off and cut it up. And basically, in each box, there's a group of letter sounds. Each letter sound has got a different colour. So in this one, it's the group 4, and it's the A is yellow. So all those A words, as soon as you've taught that A sound, you can use those words. You can drop those words on a table and they can all try and read them to each other and read them on their own and just generally practice. And if then you get to the J the next day, well, you've got the blue words, you've got the blue ones, so they can have that for practicing. Very, very useful and well worth making. I know it's effort, but it's well worth it. And one day I might be able to say, hallelujah, we've got it. And the last of all now, I will show you my website. Now I'm going to try and make it live. So if you hold with me, please. No, sorry, hold on. We'll get there and then here. And it's live now. So this is my website. I got a bit old for training, and you can hear I'm a bit croaky and I'm getting old. But I wanted to put down everything I've learned, and I wanted it to be free and easily accessible. It's called Teaching Children to Read and Write. It's www.tcrw, and you can go there. Now, if you go to the first column, you get a drop-down menu with an introduction, an overview, and then I go through the 6 steps, and all the teaching is there, and there's materials and how to do it and so on. So I've put everything I know. If you want to know about how to help those children that are in difficulties, well, I've got a whole section on the causes of reading and writing problems. So you need to understand why, and it's years that have taught me, and I've made loads of mistakes over the years, but I have developed a good understanding, I think. Preventing is better than preventing is much better than trying to put it right later on, and how to prevent it there. And if you look down here, the last one is evidence of effectiveness. Now in here is some research into systematic synthetic phonics, and the teaching is just the same as I have been saying, with extra help for the children who struggle, and fascinating research. And in schools, one school had high numbers, very much a lot of deprivation, and how well they did. So it's brilliant. So well worth looking at that research. And there's a bit of guidance for parents. There's identifying reading. So if you get a child who comes and all your class are reading and they can't, how to help them. Then if you're not so good on your phonic knowledge, you want to know how to understand that code a bit better, well, I cover a lot there. Vowels are very useful, understanding the short and long vowels. It can help with spelling, and there's a lot of guidance there and a lot of little rules with a drop, swap and double, very useful. And then here you are, those decodable readers. You know, I said I've got decodable readers on my website. These are published by other publishers, and I say a little bit about them, and so you can see what's in them, but you have to look carefully yourself to make sure that what is in those books has been taught. So be careful not to let children have books with words they can't work out. There's a bit about resources. There's a pronunciation guide there if you want. That links you to the Jolly one. There's about Jolly Phonics materials as well, and the teaching. And here, the last bit, I'm just finishing. Here is about me, but really about how it all happened and how Sarah joined me, and just how it all happened. So you can see how the ordinary teachers have ended up with a program that has gone round the world. And the reason why is not because we advertise it anywhere. I don't think I've ever seen it really advertised. It's gone from word of mouth. I went training in many different countries. I would train the teachers, and some of them would go off and make a really good job of it, be so excited that they wanted to tell everybody, and that's how it spread. Word of mouth, because it's good.